I'm coming through loud and clear via this live satellite link up from Orkney to Inchinnan. I hoped I would be there in person this evening, but life took quite a short notice turn for me and my family this summer because we've moved back to Orkney. My husband has started a new job at Highland Park Distillery for the whisky lovers out there, and I'm working at the Stromness Museum. I'm also expecting twins in the new year, so big news for us. Anyway, enough about me. I've prepared this short talk on my involvement with the schools around Inchinnan during the spring and summer of this year. I had a fabulous time working with you all on this project, and I'm delighted that you have asked me to share my experience with you. So I'm hoping that this technology doesn't let me down. First of all, thanks have to go to Anne McGinnigal for helping with setting up my school visits. And as you can see from the big number in the shape, I was very busy between April and May visiting all the local schools. Nearly 700 pupils had an introductory workshop with me, and the workshops were designed to introduce the pupils to the concept of archaeology and what an archaeologist does. We talked about the process of excavation to prepare them for visiting the dig, and we finished up learning about the story of All Hallows itself. I did a couple of different activities to break up the workshop, which I'll go into in the next slide. As a wee extra to these workshops, I also spoke to the whole school assembly at Barsale Primary. So this picture here shows you that, and it was a great experience to speak to so many children. And although they didn't all have a full workshop, it meant they all became aware of the project. So it means that really my big number in the shape there could be bumped up by about 200 pupils. The activities I used to break up my presentation varied depending on the age of the children. At Inchinnan Primary, I visited all classes from age 5 up to 11, so the learning tools I used were different depending on the age. For the younger children, I made puppets. You can see them here. And they were representing different characters from local history, starting out with a known reference point for many of the children, the Romans. And the most recent character was Archibald Campbell here on the end, who built the 19th century church at All Hallows. The older children broke into small groups and did a couple of activities. One of them you can see in this picture here was the children looking at how long it takes different materials to break down when buried underground. And the other activity we did was to handle real objects. You can see us doing that here. They were loaned to me from the Treasure Trove unit at the National Museum of Scotland, including this amazing cannonball, which was a firm favourite. And I also borrowed some medieval pottery from Archaeology Scotland. It was nice to see the schools responding to the workshops by posting pictures on their social media sites. These are a couple of tweets from Arkleston Primary. And this meant that more people in the community and further afield got to know what we were up to. The children gave their feedback in the form of post-it notes, which you've seen a couple of already on previous slides, but I have literally hundreds of them with the kids' feedback on. The schools were offered an additional optional trip to the Govan Stones, and this was in order to teach them about the early medieval stone carving tradition, or the Govan School, which was popular around the area of Inchinnan and Govan, and even wider around this area of the Clyde in the 9th to 11th centuries. And as I'm sure you're aware, Inchinnan has 3 and a bit examples of this beautiful sculpture. However, Govan has a whopping 31 stones, which are held at Govan Old Parish Church. It was great to show the pupils the wider significance of the Inchinnan stones, which a lot of them are familiar with from attending groups at the church here. Thanks go to Fraser, you can see him here, at the Govan Stones for providing an interactive tour which included looking at the stones themselves, dressing up and some object handling. Each group was split into two, and one half went with Fraser and the other half went with myself before swapping over. And each visit lasted about half a school day. With me, the children spent time in the church foyer learning about the art of stone carving through doing, except instead of stone we were using soap. The pupils could decide what kind of symbols they would like to carve in their soap. Some chose knotwork, animal motifs or Christian crosses. The children really enjoyed it and they said they'd like to come back to Govan Old again in the future, which was a really nice outcome. The schools also had the option of taking part in geophysics workshops with magnitude surveys based in Bradford. Although I didn't have any personal involvement with these sessions, I also hear they went really well and they really complemented the different activities that I ran with the schools. The highlight for most of the children was their visit to the excavation. By the time they arrived on site, I had spent sometimes over 4 hours with each class, so I knew some of them pretty well. Each excavation visit started with a site tour where the children got to experience an archaeological dig for the first time. They asked lots of questions about what they saw in the trenches, and it was really good to have volunteers from the Inchinnan Historical Interest Group working on the site to help explain things to the children. We divided the class into 3 smaller groups and we rotated around 3 activities. The activity I ran was investigating gravestones, and I felt like this was an important thing to do as the gravestones represent the most easily accessible historical evidence left on the site. The skills the children were learning could be applied in other activities, things like measuring, reading and drawing, as well as giving them a greater insight into graveyard recording. The older children were given sheets to fill in where they chose a gravestone in pairs and recorded its features. And a big thank you goes to local volunteers who helped with this, especially Anne, Kathy and Katrina. The children were fascinated to see their own surnames sometimes on the stones, as well as local place names they recognised. When it was really wet, the older children played a game with compass directions to locate particular stones because it was far too wet to use the sheets. The younger children had to spot various gravestones and tick them off on a bingo card, which you can see in this picture up here. And the primary 1s and 2s were allowed to make rubbings of the most durable granite gravestones, but we're probably not supposed to do that. The next activity we did with the kids at the excavation was led by the wonderful Dawn, and it was artefact cleaning and recording. Sometimes the children would be washing finds that they'd actually discovered themselves in the ground, and other times they were washing finds that others had found. They carefully scrubbed the objects with a toothbrush and water, which Dawn dutifully replaced after each group, and some of the pupils chose to make drawings of their objects afterwards. It was an activity that developed their observation skills looking at the objects as well as sometimes their artistic drawing skills, but also it allowed them a chance to speak to a professional archaeologist about the objects and really to look at them very closely. For most children, though, their favourite activity was getting to have a go at excavation itself. The trench that was located near the All Hallows Manse, or the site of it, was a great size and shape to allow the children to have a shot at archaeological excavation. And thanks go to Steve, Peta, Hannah and Nicola for their patience in examining every little stone which the children excitedly discovered and wanted to show them. The trench was located in an area where we might have found evidence of other structures associated with a medieval church. So we were quite excited about what we might find, and the children did find quite a high number of pieces of probable medieval pottery, and I think the fact that they'd had a look at some pottery like that in their handling session was really useful and helped them to identify it. They all left the trench with mud all over their clothes and a big smile on their face. As well as working with local schools, we also offered introductory sessions and excavation visits to the Inchinnan guides and the scouts. The guides did some artwork inspired by the stained glass windows from All Hallows, as you can see in the pictures here. And although they meet at the church every week, they really hadn't all appreciated the beauty of the stained glass that you have here. It's just gorgeous. So it was lovely for them to have a closer look at it. I also did a session with Bill with the scouts, and they visited the dig one Saturday, expertly led by Heather and the rest of the team, although I was doing something else, can't remember what I was doing, working at Dumbarton, that was it. In addition to the primary school visits, we also had a visit from an S4 class from Renfrew High, and despite wearing brand new white trainers, the teenagers seemed to enjoy their visit. A follow-up session was held at Renfrew High where I visited this class and 4 other classes who are mostly S1. And with these classes I used the school's IT suite to lead a workshop looking at old maps of the area. The pupils took a wee while to get into how the National Libraries of Scotland Maps website works, but when they got into the activity they were amazed to discover that they used to have an airport in the grounds of their school, and that was visible on the Ordnance Survey map from the mid-20th century. Many of the pupils were able to find out what was on the land where their current house or flat is, and they found that really interesting. After the project, I sent surveys to the schools for them to share with the class teachers, and I've had 6 responses from teachers, which is not too bad for right at the end of term. I asked them various questions. One of the questions I asked was, have the pupils had fun, or how much they've enjoyed it, and 100% of the teachers said that they'd enjoyed it a great deal. And on this slide you can see a couple of the other questions I asked them, as well as their answers, which you might find interesting. I also got some comments from the teachers on the feedback surveys, and I think they were all really kind and positive, and will be really good for the Inchinnan Historical Interest Group to include in the reports at the end of the project. I also got lots of feedback from the pupils about their experience in the excavation, which is in the form of voice clips, and I'm yet to collate these, but I will do so and they'll be included in the evaluation report. Most of them were saying that they enjoyed the digging the most. There's a small blip there, but hopefully it's okay. The schools were also very active online and on social media about their experience of being involved in the project. Some of the pupils made presentations a bit like PowerPoints, which are available to view online, and that's what you can see in this picture here is a couple of their presentations. Some of them did blogs So this one here was Primary 2 from Inchinnan, who did a blog, and this one over here I think was Archaeological, or I think maybe it was Barsale Primary actually, doing a blog about their introductory visit. And it was really nice to see the children's own words describing the process, or what they had felt the process was, and it showed that they really were actually taking things in when they were visiting and not just having fun. They said here, we pulled the mud all in the one direction, so that's good to know they were listening. And here's some more clips from social media. This one here is one that Lynn drew my attention to, because it was some feedback from parents who said that the children had been telling their parents about the fun that they'd had on the dig, which is great. And here's some other blogs. This is a blog here from Barsale Primary, and here's a tweet from Archaeological Primary. So it was really nice to see that they were promoting the project to the parent groups and further afield as well. One extra component of the school's participation was the opportunity they were given to achieve their Heritage Hero Award. And this award scheme is run by Archaeology Scotland. And the awards recognise the achievement of people who've been involved in a heritage project. As part of the award, people have to show that they have shared their experience and tried to inspire others about what they've done. And here on this slide you can see a couple of examples about how pupils involved in our project shared their experience. So here we have a pupil from Inchinnan who's written a poem, and it was a haiku. And over here we have a PowerPoint presentation where somebody has written about their experience. Other children drew pictures or wrote reports, and in total we had over 400 children gain their Heritage Hero Award, which was great. And on this slide you can see a special presentation we had at Inchinnan Primary School, because the whole school was involved in achieving their award, so that was a great thing to celebrate. The President of Archaeology Scotland's board, Beverly Ballin-Smith, who you can see here, came along and presented certificates, and it was wonderful to see what all the different classes had done to inspire others about what they had learned. You can see a great PowerPoint here and some artwork over here. And this is just a great photo to finish with, a wonderful picture of the whole school celebrating their involvement in the project, and you can see some usual suspects here in the middle. There's Bill. So I'd like to thank you all for the opportunity that you've given me to be involved in this project. I found it very rewarding, and I look forward to the next chapter, which is helping to produce a lasting legacy for the project in the form of an education pack for schools. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you all in November at the conference. So thank you very much. I hope this works and you do get to see it. And best wishes from Orkney. Cheerio!